What's happening, everybody? Dan with Hangar 88, and tonight we're here to bring you a short video by request of a Sean Foley, who reached out to me through Facebook and also through FrSky Steve. So the situation I helped him out on with, we thought, hey, maybe we should put it into a video. What he had going on was he wanted to create several flight modes for the different configurations that he would fly and land with his L-39 airplane. I don't know if it's a turbine or an EDF. But let's get into it and we'll explain a little bit. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the mixer and talk about our landing gear. Now, just for reference, your switches may differ across my hangar and through all my planes. I have my landing gear. If the plane, in fact, does have landing gear, it's always set up on SA, and flaps are always going to be on SB for me. These are both 3-position switches. Flaps works out perfectly. There's typically 3 positions, sucked up, half flaps and full flaps. And then landing gear, that's a little bit different because there's really only up and down. So a VAR mix is actually pretty good for that. There's a lot of ways you can do that, but I think a lot of people agree that a VAR mix is one of the easiest and quickest. So gear up. So my gear up switch is SA down or towards me. I'm sorry. Yes, down. I always get those confused. But you notice on my screen that there's an exclamation mark. Now, if you set up, we're just going to go ahead and put that back without the exclamation mark, and I'll show you what that means. You see on the graph to the right that when I activate my landing gear to come down, which is the forward position on my switch here, back that up just a little bit so you can see the switch. I'm just trying to stay out of the reflection of my radio so you don't have to see my ugly mug. Okay, so switch all the way forward or up is my landing gear down. When I bring it down, it activates. So it still works in that middle position. You see, I'm hitting the middle position here and my gear came down, right? And that's all fine and dandy. For a long time, I ran that way too. Where you run into a problem, or not even a problem, just an issue, is if you're trying to attach a flight mode to that, right? You have to either have something that holds true in the source of, or in the form of a logical switch, or you know, some sort of information that you're basing it off of, you know, voltage or airspeed, whatever. So something has to trigger that flight mode. And in this case, we're just going to be talking about the mechanical switches here. So he had assigned his flight mode to the center position. And he was worried that when he flew, he would bump it all the way forward, not paying attention. The gear would still come down, but the flight mode wouldn't activate unless he hit the spot right in the middle. Now, to alleviate that, all you have to do is long press any category that you see or any value that you see that has the 3 little lines. Oops, get that out of there. So there are 3 little lines above that SA on the top left-hand corner. When you see that, you can hold long press the select key and it'll bring you up some further options. Now in this case, the option we're after is invert. And what invert means is my friend Adam Moz explained this better to me. It's the not switch. So anytime that the switch is not in SA down, that value holds true, right? So you may be wondering, well, earlier without the invert selection or the not switch selected, the landing gear was still coming down, but the flight mode wasn't recognizing it because it had to be in that center position. It had to be very specific at that moment. When you do the not switch or the invert switch, anytime it is not in that SA down, that will hold true and activate that flight mode. And I'll show you. So we'll go back to our flight modes page. And I've already got this set up. So these flight modes are easy to set up. If you don't know how to set one up, there are other videos. I have a video that goes through setting up some other flight modes, but they're all relatively the same. And basically what you're doing when you're creating a flight mode is you're creating this isolated mode where primarily you're going to have the ability to trim separately when you're in that configuration and not mess with your default flight mode. So he has flaps half, flaps full, landing gear down. So those are all three different flight modes, right? The landing is gear only, no flaps. But he wanted to do a fourth flight mode when he wanted to deploy full flaps and deploy his landing gear to come in for a landing. So how do you do that? What we're going to do is we're going to go back out and we're going to head over to the logical switches. Now, don't mind the first 5 logical switches. Those were other tests that I ran. We're going to go down here to logical switch 6. And I just named it gear F flaps for full flaps. We're going to leave it at normal. And the function we're going to look for is the AND function. So what that means is when value 1 and value 2 are activated or true, it will activate logical switch 6, which is our gear and flaps. So value 1, same thing. You're going to click into it. We're going to find that switch, click off of it, and you see the 3 lines up at the top. So we're going to long press our select button and we're going to hit invert again. Again, when it's not in that SA down position, it's going to activate. And we're going to want flaps down. So we'll back out of that. And we're going to head back into our flight modes page. Okay, standard configuration, default flight mode. Landing gear is up and everything is good. Now we go landing gear down. You see that in the middle position or the top position, landing gear still holds true in that flight mode. When it's in SA down, it shuts that flight mode off. So when it's not in SA down, be it the center position or the up position, it holds true. Now, flaps half, flaps full. The other flight mode 4, what you wanted to activate, if we remember, was full flaps with landing gear deployed. So we're going to deploy our landing gear and nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Well, it's due to the priority in which this list of flight modes is configured right now. And what I mean by that is SB center position and SB down take priority over the landing switch. So I can't even get that landing to activate right now because SB down holds true and activates that flight mode. It's only when I shut or move away from SB down or negative SB, see even center position SB, flaps half, that takes away my flight mode 3, right? Because you can't have 2 flight modes at once. So priority, what we're going to want to do is think about this for a second. If we have half flaps, in this situation, he's not going to land in half flaps. He wanted full flaps. So that one's fine because he's not going to come in and land there. Now full flaps, he can fly around in full flaps, maybe do some low passes, stuff like that, and then suck them back up. And then if he just wants to land with no flaps, well, the flaps are going to be up and then the landing gear will take over. But what if he wants to come in with landing gear and full flaps? That's where the priority takes precedent. So we're going to move this above the 2 configurations that can cancel that out. So we're going to move that into the second position. Now, if you see, my landing gear is up. We're going to deploy full flaps there. And then we're going to activate landing flaps. Now, because that switch configuration creates the situation that activates flight mode gear flaps, it's going to highlight that. Even if we just have flaps full, that's still going to work on its own, or landing gear only. Again, flaps full, deploy landing gear, and now we have a separate flight mode for when he has his full flaps down and landing gear down, which can create a little bit more drag, throw the plane into, you know, a different orientation that he doesn't like, and he can trim that out. So anyhow, it's late. I hope I explained this well enough. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment down below or a question down below. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button and consider subscribing. And also, I can be reached through Facebook at Dan Coelho. You'll see the big Hangar 88 banners on my web or on my page. And constantly roaming around the Ethos page, the Ethos group page on Facebook as well. So anyhow, thank you. And again, I hope somebody learned something tonight, and we'll see you then on the next one.